What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic here, and I tell you what, the podcast studio is a buzz with energy. I am talking to consummate bee student, actually more like bee professor, Ms. Gayla Gibson, packaging engineer here at Vortex Optics. And how many hives do you have, Gayla?
Currently, probably between 80 and 100.
Between 80 and 100, and you had up to 160, I believe.
160 last summer. We'll probably be close to that again this year.
If it's not clear, we're talking bees today, raising bees, and what it takes to do that. Gayla, we've had several conversations about bees in the past. In fact, every time we chat, I find out some other new interesting factoid about your life that I find just absolutely fascinating. And I was like, we got to jump on the podcast. And you're like, I don't know. There's a level of trepidation there. And I'm like, remember the conversation that we just had for like 30 minutes? That's just all we got to do. That's all we got to do. So hopefully the butterflies, we're talking all sorts of bugs today. Hopefully the butterflies a little bit gone by now. But
butterflies are gone. Let's talk bees.
Let's talk bees. Before we do that, let's go. I just want to dive into a little bit of your background and just kind of like where you grew up, how you grew up, and then like how you got into beekeeping, which is really cool.
Well, I grew up in suburbia, Kansas City, and hated every minute of it. My dad was a farmer who left the farm, so moved us to suburbia. On the weekends, we'd always go back to an uncle's farm or a grandmother's farm, and that was a highlight of my life. Loved it. Loved being on the farm. Turned 17, I'm gone. I'm out of here. Moved to go off to college. After college, I moved on to Germany and then back to the United States. So I've lived around a lot.
Here's what I would say. Out of a lot of the people that I know, there's maybe two other people that live as much of like I'd say like a homestead. I mean, like you keep bees, you garden, you do all the things that like I wish I spent more time doing.
Well, that all started probably about 20 years ago. I took it upon myself to learn a new skill every year. We lived off-grid in Idaho, just moved there, and quite a distance to a grocery store. So I took it upon myself to learn a new skill every year. Started with canning, cheese making, all that type of thing to feed the family. So I really loved it. I wish I had listened to my grandparents more when I was a kid, learned more from them. But since then, every year I've learned a new skill. Some have stuck with me, some have left. But yeah, I like living the simple life.
You said to me a couple weeks ago, you go, yeah, all I need is my camper and my kayak, and I'm good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's all I need. Give me a good river till I find my peace, go down the river, be alone, love it. I don't need a lot of extras. If it's there, I can make something out of it.
I love it. How did you've done all these things. How did you get into beekeeping? What led you to do that? Because that seems like one of these things that stuck.
It did stick. When I was a kid, our elementary school used to take field trips to Fort Osage. And next to Fort Osage was lots of vineyards and apple orchards. And right along there was a big beekeeper who just happened to be distantly related, but related. And I was so proud when we went in there that, hey, these are my relatives, look what they're doing. We always took a tour of that with the school. And I was a proud moment. I was always interested in that. And I loved going there and just seeing how it works and everything. And then, as I grew up, I was never really in a good location to do it, or never really had the funds to do it. And then once I got old enough, I'm like, I'm going for it. I just really have that drive still to learn about it. So it was just something that seemed like it would be a never-ending learning process, and that really intrigued me.
Super cool. Super cool. What goes into beekeeping for a person, or why would a person want to get into it? Because I know, like, I did it one time several years ago, and there definitely is like a time and a care component to it, which at the time I think we'd just had our second daughter, and so I wasn't able to commit the time and care that I would have liked. But I went through a lot of the process and it was fascinating, and it was so cool to work with the bees and watch how they work. What do you think a person, like if you're going to say, talk a person into, I think you should beekeep, like what would you say like would be interesting or what they might get out of it? And I'm not just like yield of honey. Like I think that is a result, but you're probably getting some other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, people get into it for a lot of reasons. Some are strictly scientific. They love that challenge. Some people make mead, so they want the honey. Some people just want to make, for example, maybe the pollens. You could harvest the pollens or the propolis or medicinal reasons. You know, they can make balms and things out of the wax. There's a multitude of reasons why people would get into beekeeping. Some people are thinking, okay, we have such a pollinator decline. I want to help out as much as I can. There's that reason. I mean, there's such a multitude of reasons.
For a person that's like, well, I'm thinking about this, but like, what do they need for space to keep 1 or 2 boxes of bees?
Not much. I mean, there's backyard beekeeping, there's balcony beekeeping. So, I mean, there's people in cities that have a little beehive, one hive on their balcony. Of course, you have to check your city ordinances, but you don't need a lot of space, really.
Yeah, I mean, check your local ordinances, or like a bee outlaw. Be an outlaw.
Be an outlaw. I'm definitely a bee outlaw.
I'm not suggesting that officially. What about space, or maybe like you said, like people are doing it on their balcony or things like that. So really, like, it's not a big concern. Like you're gonna have this ball of angry bees in your area.
No, not really. Most of the time, they're pretty docile. Weather, they can be a little bit irritated if they're cooped up for a long time, or gray cast skies, they get a little bit irritated. But I mean, you don't need a whole lot of space. If you've got a normal suburban backyard and it's allowed in your area, you got plenty of room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing that is super interesting. Like you're saying, they can be, saying bee a lot. Not moody, but they can be moody. Like,
they can be very moody.
Depending on just like what's going on in the hive, what's going on outside the hive, which I think is like an interesting thing too. They're not just like this even keel thing.
Definitely not. And you can read your hive sometimes. I mean, if you go up to it and you crack it, you can hear, if there's something wrong, you can hear the buzz. You can tell in their patterns that something's going on. So just be cautious,
What would be, like, if you're like, oh yeah, everybody's chill right now, what does that sound like compared to like maybe they're a little bit irritated? That might be something a person wants to know.
Definitely the volume. Definitely the volume. And you can see the agitation, the way they move. But definitely volume. It's hard to describe unless you've actually been in the hive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think even a new beekeeper, you would notice the sound, the volume.
Let's talk basic equipment. What's a person going to need to get started?
I would say a new beekeeper, don't skimp on at least a jacket, a beekeeping jacket with a veil, good gloves, a hive tool, and start with just a bottom board, a hive body, 10 frames, inner cover, and a lid. You can start right there. And as the bees grow, then you want to add a second box and then further up if you're going to collect honey. But you could get started with just the basic bottom board, hive body, inner cover, and a lid.
Gotcha. And a hive tool is really almost like a miniature crowbar,
like a little pry bar. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, not a ton of stuff.
Not really. It's not really cheap, but it's, with 1 or 2 hives, you can get by fairly inexpensive.
What would you say, like, average cost to, startup cost?
If you're buying from the big box beekeeping supplies, you're looking probably $350 to start without bees. If you are lucky and have a local Amish community that makes bee stuff, maybe $150, $200 tops.
Okay. Yeah, and you bring up a good thing. You got to have the bees, right?
You got to have the bees.
So where are these guys coming from, and what are a couple different ways a person can get their bees?
If you're a starting beekeeper, probably you would purchase either through a club or through websites as far as like Dedant or Man Lake. They'll sell bees. But I would really suggest joining a club.
Okay.
You can get better prices. You've got a community around you. that can help you out. If you don't have that opportunity and you're a little bit more advanced in beekeeping, you might be able to catch a swarm or find a neighbor that has bees and wants to do a split.
Okay. What's a split?
A split is when your hive gets a little overpopulated. You divide it into two so that you can have two hives instead of one, and then they'll build up the population again. But you'll need to either purchase another queen for the second one, or you will need to let it make its own queen.
Gotcha. And then the types of, like, to my knowledge, you can get what they call a nuke, or you can buy I think in general, like a 3-pound pack of bees, right?
Yep. You can buy what's a 5-frame nuke. It'll come with an established queen. I mean, she's already laying, so she already knows these bees. Those are more than likely her offspring in there. You'll have brood in there. You'll have eggs in there. My opinion is start with a nuke because you already have it established. You can also buy a 2-pound package or 3-pound package where it's a queen in a cage and it's dumped in there with 2 pounds of bees or 3 pounds of bees. They're not quite acquainted, so it's a little slower process. You don't have any built up comb. You just have bees and a queen. So if you're a new beekeeper and you're starting with that and fresh equipment, you don't have any wax built up. So it takes them longer to get started than if you would start with a nuke. Because with that, you'll have 5 frames of pulled comb. And so she can already start laying right away.
Gotcha. So I went the 3-pound pack of bees route, which was like, it was just kind of how I was like,
Sure.
I kind of want to do it this way.
Sure.
I think I like the juice of having this, like, mass of bees. But I went to the place, like I ordered them, I picked them up, brought them back in my truck, like, just in the cab of my truck. I don't think there were really any escapees. And it was interesting. Like you said, that queen is separate. And the way that I did it, like you see people, because I watched a bunch of YouTube videos on it, and people will do it different ways. Like some people be like, oh, they get the queen out and, they'd shake their bees into the box. I just removed frames and opened up the cork to let the bees out, separated the queen, got her. No, I didn't get her out. I think I removed the cork and replaced it with like a piece of
marshmallow or something
that the other bees had to get through to kind of release her, and I think it gives time to get acquainted with her.
Yep.
But I just kind of set that all in the bottom box and let them kind of do their thing. And once they all crawled out, then I removed the box and off we went.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to do it. You can take the queen and just put her between a couple frames, and sometimes I'll have the bottom box with the frames already in it, and then I'll set that package on top with another box, and then just let them crawl down to the queen. A lot of guys say take the can out, spray them with sugar water, shake them around, and then shake them in there. I don't find that necessary because they're going to follow wherever that queen is. So if you put her little cage down below, maybe shake a few bees out to keep her warm, but they're going to go right down in there with her right away. And then you just calmly take the box out the next day. Why give them the stress of shaking them around?
Yeah, that was my thinking too, and maybe I almost think I did probably more what you described there, and it really is amazing. Like it does not take them long to find her. They know who she is, and they know they want to take care of her, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah, she emits a pheromone, and they orient to that pheromone right away. I mean, if you take her in a cage and put her 5 feet away, they'll find her. They'll just do a little trail right to her. Because their goal is to keep her warm, keep her satisfied. Yeah. So keep her safe.
And like you said, a nuke is kind of just like a little bit more of you've got this kind of pre-established thing. Everybody knows everybody. That gives you a head start a little bit as well?
Yeah, because she can't lay until they've pulled comb. And if she already has that comb there, she's already started laying.
Yeah.
So, if she has to wait to lay the eggs, the longer you stifle her ovaries, the longer it takes her then to start laying eggs. So the longer she's in that cage, the longer she's not able to lay. So once she's out, she'll take a little bit longer to start laying.
Okay, gotcha. What about types of bees? Any recommendations on what might be better for like a new beekeeper?
Probably Italians or Carnolians. They're a little bit milder. The Carnolians seem to start a little earlier and build comb faster. Honey production's good. They're a calm bee. Italians are a little bit slower. They go through their food stores faster. Therefore, they might rob a little bit more from other hives. But either one of those two would be a good start.
Gotcha. Speaking of starting, and maybe this depends on where you're at, we'll say the United States, right? Regionally, like maybe if you're in Florida, that's different than, Washington or something like that on the opposite corner there. But when do people typically get their hive going if they're starting a new hive?
I would say around the first sign of dandelions is a good time to get your hive out, hive ready, if you're starting new. And usually a little bit there, a little bit after.
Yeah, that's one thing we were talking about the other day. You were saying dandelions are pretty critically important to
Very
bees.
important.
Yeah.
It's one of their first sources of feed. So don't mow. Don't mow those dandelions. Do not put poison on them. Keep your dandelions. Feed the bees.
It's interesting. I get served up like Instagram reels, and really like dandelions are pretty. They're a pretty incredible flower.
Very incredible.
For a variety of reasons. They're edible. Bees depend on them. I know, like in the spring, bears like to eat them. Things like that. And man, as humans, we sure love to hate them.
I know, but dandelions are kind of a miracle food for the bees and for us as well. They can be medicinal for us as well.
I like it. What do you know about what can you tell me about dandelions? What do you know about dandelions that I don't?
From the root to the bloom, it's all edible, of course. You can make a tea from the root. You can make an extract from the blooms. You can eat the leaves in a salad. Whatever. I mean,
I don't know,
there's
man.
a lot. Dandelion is a superfood.
It is a superfood. I like it. All pluses for the dandelion. If a person's going to start out, are there advantages to having multiple hives at all?
I would say...
Are you kind of doing the work already, so it could be beneficial, or...
I would say no more than 2 if you're going to start out. It can be overwhelming if you don't know what you're doing. 1, is kind of not a lot of work. 2 would be just about right for a new person. You're, like I said, you're already doing the work, so you might as well do it on 2. But I think if something goes wrong in the first one, it could get a little overwhelming if you have more. I would stick with 2 if I'm a new person. Maybe 3 tops, but no more. A lot of people jump in. They think, I'm just going to get a dozen or whatever, and they get overwhelmed, and then the adventure's over.
Yeah.
And it could be quite pricey as well.
For sure.
Especially if something goes wrong.
If something goes wrong and a person's bees, say, don't make it over the winter, did they necessarily do something wrong?
Not necessarily. There's so many factors. I mean, there's so many things you need to treat for, whether you treat organically or chemically or however you treat.
What would you be treating for?
Mites.
Okay.
That's the varroa mite is horrible. I mean, in Wisconsin, if you're in the South, you have a lot of other factors. You'd have hive beetles and other pests. I'm not exactly sure everything they've got down there. Thank goodness we don't have hive beetles too bad up here. But varroa mites mainly up here.
Gotcha. And what do they do to the hive then?
They get inside the cell where the bee's trying to grow, and then the youth bee will come out of the cell with deformed wings, or they're weak, or they just basically break down a hive. It's weaker.
And then, so you said there's a couple ways to treat for them. How do you like to treat for them, or what are a couple common ways? I
treat 3 times a year. Spring, when I first open my hive or I'm first getting them back, I'll use a thymol paste. Basically, it's a thymol, which is a derivative of thyme.
Okay.
And it's made in a carrier gel type thing, I guess, oil, whatever. And you just put it on a pad, put it in the hive, and they walk through it and traipse it throughout, and it'll kill the varroa mite. Usually you do 2 rounds of that. And then in the midsummer, when during the honey flow, I will treat with, drawing a blank here. Formic acid. And I do it a little different technique than most with the formic acid. You can buy it in strips. I don't use the strips. I buy it in bulk and make a little tray. But you got to be careful because it's harsh. It's harsh. So You don't want to. It could kill your queen if you're not careful.
Gotcha. So you're like diluting it then with like some sort of ratio of that and water?
No,
or?
it's water. It's with water. So you buy it at 90%. You dilute it down to the percent fails me at the moment. I think it's like 40% or something. I can't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, you dilute it down.
Gotcha. So 3 times a year, though, like that's not, super crazy.
No, it's not super crazy. There's some new techniques out there I'm going to try this year. Some of the bigger beekeepers have come up with an idea. Actually, it was Randy Oliver's idea, I believe. He's the scientific bee guy. He came up with you use oxalic acid with vegetable glycerin and make a concoction. You can put it on a Swiss, I think it's Swiss or Swedish sponge, and then you can leave it in there for a longer period of times. So it just kind of evaporates in there. So that versus an oxalic acid vapor. So a lot of guys will use a little vapor tool and they'll put oxalic granules on there, oxalic acid granules, and they'll vaporize the hives. I don't care for that. I don't think it's very effective, but I'd like to try this new technique with the sponge.
Gotcha. When and how does a person, if they're like, wow, like I've successfully gone through the process and like my bees are doing great. I've added, a honey box. They look like they're in a good place. When and how do you extract that honey? You got to go back into the hive. Mm-hmm. Once again, probably somewhat disruptive to the bees. But what's that look like? So
you don't want to pull the honey frame until they've actually capped it because there's a certain level of moisture that's in the honey. So you want to wait till they've naturally closed it off themselves because they know when the moisture level's correct. So once they've capped it, then you can pull that frame and either replace it or you can wait till the whole box is full and then pull the whole box.
Okay, gotcha. And then with that frame, how are you getting the honey out?
Well, then gets a sticky process. Sticky's not my thing. So you basically cut the cappings off, the very thin layer of the wax that they sealed it with, and then do it on both sides, and then you put it in basically a centrifuge, and spin it, and it'll just spins out. Gotcha.
How do you cut that cap off, that wax cap off?
You can use a hot knife. I just use a regular knife, or some people have decapping, chain-driven or however-driven decapping thing. It's got water hot knives, and it slices it, and it just automatically does it.
Wow.
I've got one I'll be setting up this year, but I haven't used it yet.
Okay, nice. And then, like, what are you getting as like an average yield from a hive then?
I think rule of thumb, I want to say 3 gallons a box, if that sounds right. I don't usually measure it that way.
Okay.
We pulled off maybe 30 or 40 hives this year, and we had close to 400 gallons. So some hives had 5 or 6 boxes, some had 1 or 2. I don't really measure it that way. A lot of people are very meticulous how they measure how much they get off each hive. I don't really care. I'm not in it for the honey. I'm in it more for the knowledge and the science of it.
Yeah.
So honey's just a plus.
From a knowledge perspective, and probably related to the science, like what are some cool things that you've learned along the way that you just think, oh man, that is really neat?
The whole community in the hive is just amazing. How they communicate with each other, how they protect each other, how the life cycle is, the newborns through to the olders, their different roles they take throughout their life cycle. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is crazy to watch them work just so in sync. I mean, there's a lot of bees in there, but they all have a common goal. And I think the other thing that's cool is how fast they do it. It really is incredible.
It's very incredible. I mean, they all have their role. They know their role. And it's crazy how they know when to move on to the next stage. I don't know how they do that, but they have a communication. It's amazing when you watch them come back and they've got a full load of pollen or whatever. And then a bunch of bees will come around them and they'll do a little dance. And they're basically saying, okay, if you turn right at that next tree and then go down to Farmer Johnson's apple orchard, then take a left and you'll find this great tree. It's like, what are they telling each other?
Wait, they're communicating?
They're communicating where to go.
Where to go.
Where to go.
I just assumed it was like, all right.
Free for all? Nope.
Headed out. We'll see what we do.
When one of them finds a great spot, they'll come back and communicate the exact coordinates, how to get there.
Unbelievable.
Same thing with if you have a virgin queen. The scouts will go out and find another hive with drones, the males, communicate with them where they're going to meet up with that queen. They come back and tell their hive, okay, we've got a date for you at this spot at this time. So then the queen knows, go out. I'm going to get mated at this spot. She'll get mated by 1 to 5 or 6 different drones. Then she'll come back. But those drones from another hive know where to go because they've communicated those coordinates where to go.
And she's going out to get mated by another hive just for genetic diversity then? Or that's just how they do it?
That's just how they do it. I would assume for genetic diversity. I don't know. I don't know.
You weren't able to ask them?
I wasn't able to ask them. I guess if there's no other hives around, you mate with your own drones, but then you're just basically mating with your own sons, and that's kind of weird.
Little bit.
Yeah,
I think they've got the situation on lock. One of my favorite things was when I had that hive, like it was set up so like in the morning, like the sun would be kind of hitting the opening, right? Actually, that's one thing I want to ask you is like kind of what ideally direction should your hive face? But man, that sun would just be hitting there, and just the activity of them just come firing out of the hive and bees firing in and firing out. Like it was just this constant stream of bees passing each other. And I was just like, it was just so cool to watch them do that.
Yeah. Well, I prefer that I get the morning sun on my hive, that they get active a little bit earlier. Some guys like full sun, some guys like shade. I prefer full sun. I don't like working in the full sun, but my experience is my hives do a little better in the full sun.
In full sun, okay.
Yeah, I've heard from my mentor that he prefers shade, but I don't know. I guess it's preference.
Yeah.
But I like full sun in the morning for sure.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's not a lot, but you see a lot of consistency, but then also, different folks have different things that work for them, and probably I'm sure that's through a lot of trial and error. And
yeah, you ask 5 beekeepers, you'll get 8 different answers.
One thing that I do think is cool that I found, and I wasn't able to join a local club, but there really are, there's a community,
Yes.
Oftentimes, just regionally, this micro community of beekeepers, and there's a club, and you can pick somebody else's brain on what's working for them, or maybe, like you said, you had a mentor that helped you get started and grow. Like, talk about that a little bit.
You definitely want to join a club. As a new beekeeper, don't buy bees until you're in a club. Just find your community. It's a great resource. You're going to find people that have 1 hive. You'll find people like myself that have 100 hives. But get in that club. Express the fact that you want a mentor. Get a mentor. Because you're going to come up with so many challenges. And if you don't know where to go with it, you'll run to YouTube or someplace, and you might not get the information you need. But if you go to your club, they're going to have the similar experiences because they're in the same area as you. So they know what you're up against. So ask your community, where does anybody know about a bee club? Where can I go? Join 2 maybe if you can. But definitely join a bee club. Get yourself a mentor.
Gotcha.
It's a lot to do your first couple years without a mentor.
Yeah.
It's a lot to do. Even if it's just a phone call, you might need somebody, hey, what do I do in this situation? It's very important.
If a person is intrigued by this conversation, are there any YouTube channels that you like that you've been like, yeah, this person gives good information and shows things like in a way that you think is pretty solid?
It depends on the level you want to go. If you want to go just good knowledge, Jason Chrisman out of Ohio, he's pretty good. JCBs. I like Cayman Reynolds. But if you want to go really scientific, Randy Oliver's your guy. You may need to watch a follow-up video from Cayman. He'll kind of explain what Randy just said. But those are 3 guys I like to listen to. Try to find somebody who's in your region, though. These guys are further south than me. Randy's in California. Cayman, I think, is in, I don't know exactly, the south somewhere. And then Jason's over in Ohio. It's probably better if you can find someone very knowledgeable in your area for a beginner, because you're going to run up against different challenges than these guys in the south.
Mm-hmm. What one thing I was going to ask too, like I brought up, getting your hive through the winter. What are some things that you might want to do in the winter to make sure your bees are doing good and have what they need?
If you get a warm enough day, I would say if you find a day that's hitting 50, you want to check their food stores. Make sure that the cluster is close enough to the food that they can actually get to it. And if not, take from the outside and move it in without trying to break that cluster. You cannot break your cluster.
And what is the cluster then?
It's basically a nucleus of the bees trying to keep that queen warm and keep each other warm. They'll go inside to outside constantly, and they'll move in that cluster to the food. But if the food isn't close enough, you could have 4 or 5 frames of honey on the outsides, but if that cluster can't get to it, it doesn't do them any good. So you got to make sure that they've got food. You can make a candy board and put it right on top of them so they can move up, because it's a little easier to move up than to move over as a group. So just make sure they have plenty of food.
And a candy board is just essentially just sugar then?
Sugar and water. I think they put a little bit of cream of tartar in there for what reason, I'm not really sure. I don't make them. I send my bees to California, so I'm not a great person to ask about overwintering. But on a warm day, just make sure they have what they need. Make sure you're not getting a little moisture in there, dripping in there, condensation, and so forth. But just check on them.
Yeah. That's a cool thing that you do. And I think it emphasizes the importance of pollinators and how much we need them as a society. So you've got your hives, and instead of just, trying to keep them alive through the winter here in Wisconsin, you're shipping them elsewhere to help, pollinate egg fields, yes?
Yeah, we send ours to the almond groves. It has its pros and cons. Yes, we keep them alive primarily. Overwintering is difficult in cold climates, but you also run against other people that didn't treat their bees quite as well, may have some diseases, may have some pest that, they'll get into your hive, they'll try to rob, and they'll bring you those things. And so you kind of run a little bit of risk of that way as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But for the most part, we bring more through the winter that way than we do if we were to overwinter here.
Gotcha. And then, like, as a beekeeper, with the volume of hives that you have, like, are they paying you for the use of your bees? Are they renting your bees, essentially?
Basically, yes. We hire a bigger beekeeper that takes ours with his, so we have to pay semi-fees back and forth, and if he feeds them, we give him money for whatever he feeds them or he treats them or whatever. So we probably don't get but about half as much as he gets, but that's okay. They come back alive and I don't have to buy new bees, and he takes good care of them. So
very cool. Anything we missed? Anything you love about beekeeping? Any information that you think would be handy for a person, or something, getting started they'd want to know?
Basically what we covered: find a mentor, find a community, find a club. I'm not going to say you're setting yourself up for disaster if you don't, but you will be much more successful if you do.
Gotcha. Well, I like it. Well, Gayla, super fun conversation. Hopefully we've maybe inspired somebody to at least investigate keeping bees for themselves. I think stuff like this is getting more popular. I feel like I see a trend of people, we've gotten away from a lot of these things, whether it's, beekeeping or gardening. And there's kind of this desire to kind of get back to some of those things, which I think is really awesome. And I think people should do. Like we talked about, pollinators, incredibly important. We need these things. Just anecdotally, like I can remember, just in my lifetime, bees used to be everywhere.
Everywhere.
You would see them all the time, and if you had a shrub or flowers in your yard that was blooming, you could hear it when you got close to it. If there was a flower, there was a bee on it. And now I find it notable when I see like a honeybee or a bumblebee.
Right. I see them more often because I'm attuned to it. But like you said, as a kid, I can't remember going outside in the summer without getting stung 4 or 5 times, because I stepped on a bee. I don't see it anymore. But then again, I don't see kids outside much anymore either.
Well, yeah.
There's that.
There's that too. I just nowadays, we'll be at the local pool and I'll see a honeybee in the pool, and I'm like, oh no, instead of just get this thing out of the pool, I'm trying to save the darn thing.
Actually, they love pools. They love to drink from the chlorine pools.
And it's not toxic to them. The ones that I find are just kind of like they got into the deep end a little too much. Or?
Probably.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they love hot tubs. They love swimming pools. So don't kill them. Maybe help them out of the water. Maybe they've been in there a little too long. But for some reason, they love that.
I think water. I'm glad we brought this up. I was thinking I was closing it out, and then of course I keep going because I have all these things that I want to ask about or talk about. But water is pretty important.
Very important.
So, what do you want to make sure that you have for your beers? Yeah, you might be, like you said, you might make some mead later. In regards to water.
You need to have something close by. If you don't have a creek or a pond or some sort of water source close by, make sure that you're putting out either like a bird bath with stones in it so they don't drown, or maybe even like a chicken water, put some stones in it so they don't fall into the water but they can still drink. But keep fresh water out for them. They definitely need water. The further they have to fly for water, the more they're going to use it up, So water close by is good. Gotcha.
Cool. Well, this is a fun one. Like I said, hopefully we've inspired somebody to at least take a look. And everybody out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And maybe you'll start your own apiary here in the near future.
If I can do it, anyone can do it.
I like it. Well, you're pretty good at it. Thanks, everybody. Take care. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, Gayla.
Thank you.